Woo! Hello, Nebraska people. It is a hot one today. 100 plus. So I'm starting two video sequence, if you will. A while back I did greatest college football offense of all time, and honestly it was easy. All the greats for the most part kind of stood out in terms of the players, the numbers they put up. Finding the defenses has not been easy, because you're talking eras, you're talking run defense dominant, pass defense dominant, speed, NFL draft players that they have. Some defenses were amazing and didn't have that many draft players or all pros, whatever. Style, where they bend but don't break and create a lot of turnovers, etc. It's not been easy. You know, this being a Nebraska channel, I thought I would do an initial video going into the best college football defenses that I've ever seen, because it was going to be way too long. So let's just make a video that's talking specifically about these two Nebraska defenses first, put it into that greatest college football of all time, etc. Shout out to 1994 defense, was very close to being one of these two that I chose. As I was watching both these defenses, grabbing footage, watching their mobility, looking at their competition, the numbers they allowed, blah blah blah, like, I changed my mind like twice. Different eras, both defenses had different styles and characteristics of them. Flow, the style of defense they played. It's a close battle. What defense would you rather have? Let's start with the 1999 defense. We talk about Nebraska's greatest defense of all time. For some reason, we appreciate the 1999 defense, but it doesn't get the true appreciation of kind of how good they were. It was headed by Mike Brown, one of the greatest Nebraska safety, the greatest Nebraska defensive back we've ever had. Arguably two of the greatest players at their position in the secondary we've ever had, and Ralph Brown at right corner and Mike Brown at strong safety. But then we also had a ton of no-name players on that. Everybody that was on that team, Steve Warren, defensive tackle, put up one of the greatest individual seasons in Nebraska history, playing about as dominant as you could play. Cal Vanderbosch on the same defensive line. Aaron Wills, an underrated defensive end who was really just a system player, but mean, aggressive, mean against the run, and had attitude. Let's see, we also had at linebacker, we had experience-based at linebacker with Tony Ortiz, Carlos Polk, one of the better run-stuffing middle linebackers we've ever had, Brian Shaw. We had Julius Jackson. Julius Jackson, I feel like, was playing as well as many inside linebackers. And again, all these guys were seniors. They were too deep at both outside flanks, and Carlos Polk in the middle. Run-stuffing front seven. You had at corner Keo Craver. Ralph Brown arguably was one of the most prolific individual corners we've ever had. Started every single game from his very first freshman game all the way to his last game as a senior. Mike Brown at safety, 5 interceptions, was the team leading tackler. He was the team leading tackler for all 3 years that he was a starter. Not necessarily considered all that fast. He did run a 4.55. It's not like he was slow. And he wasn't necessarily a tall guy. He was one of the smartest defensive players I think we've ever had. You always hear about Grant Wistrom and Jason Peter being some of the greatest leaders for a team. I would make the argument that Mike Brown and Ralph Brown were on that caliber of leadership. In my opinion, he's the greatest tackler I've ever seen. Open field tackler I've ever seen. You see tacklers that are hitters, that put their shoulders down and knock you limb from limb. You see guys that will throw at you but always find a way to grab a hold of your ankles. You'll find guys that will wrap you up and they'll carry you a little ways because they're trying to go for the ball. I've never seen a tackler that had all the technique in the world but would pop you and drag you down while simultaneously ripping at the ball. I've never seen a guy tackle in the open field the way he did. And then Keo Craver, I think by his senior year, was arguably one of the better corners Nebraska's ever had. So that secondary was legit. And some of the numbers that they held down was, like I said, they're a rushing-based defense. All right, rushing yards allowed a game, 77. Average per rush, 2.2 yards a rush. Now, I was talking about their secondary. Their secondary, from a pass efficiency standpoint, they were giving up 175 yards. They pulled down 18 interceptions. that year, and they allowed only 11 touchdowns. They gave up 12.5 points a game, okay? Basically, they were dominant pretty much the entire year. They had one sour game against Colorado in Colorado, where I swear to God, they were basically beating the living smell out of them the entire game, all the way up until the fourth quarter, and then just Colorado started gashing them and gashing them and gashing them. And they gave up quite a bit of yards. That game went to overtime. If you want to talk about players making plays to maintain that game, Mike Brown being one of them. And total yards allowed a game, 252. This is where they do set the record for the most sacks in a season. And this is interesting because during that, in 1999, they played a bunch of running teams for the most part, and how they accumulated with a kind of a no-name defense, not necessarily the highest acclaimed, defensive line, like the 97 defensive line or even the 2009 defensive line. They found a way to accumulate 54 sacks that season. That's ridiculous. None of the championship defenses ever got that many. All right, so that's just numbers in a nutshell. In my opinion, when I watched that defense play, was one of the contributors to me changing my mind a couple times. Just overall athleticism in the front seven. You didn't get the impression or feel that they were light on their feet, that they could really move sideline. They were incredibly fast, but move sideline to sideline and be malleable if they had to be, if they played all of a sudden a spread offense, if they all of a sudden played against a crazy mobile quarterback. Could they stay with that mobile quarterback? And again, that's what you feel like when you watch them play. That doesn't mean that that's really the case, because, like I said, they were not a slow defense. They were a sideline-to-sideline defense. They weren't slow, and they played fast offenses. Tennessee was fast, Texas was fast, Colorado had some speed, some burners. It's not like they couldn't stay with people. You just, from that front seven, it felt like they had stiff hips. They were monumental beasts against the run, putting up 54 sacks, being one of the better secondaries that year, and getting 18 interceptions, only giving up 11 touchdown passes. By and large, that's a good balance of the defense, okay? All right, moving on. The one that gets all the press, because it had on that defense arguably one of the greatest defensive players of all time. Should have won the Heisman, didn't win the Heisman, went on to be a multi-year All-Pro. If anybody ever talks about the greatest defense of all time at Nebraska, the 09 defense is usually one of the ones that people refer to initially. And they had Ndamukong Suh, should have won the Heisman. Charles Woodson could win the Heisman. Ndamukong Suh absolutely should have won the Heisman. That defensive line, outside of Ndamukong Suh and Jared Crick in the middle, they were athletic. Everybody along that defensive line was fast and athletic, and honestly, their style was different. They were a little bit more sit back and read. And again, this goes to what I was going to say, is that it depends kind of what style of defense you want. The 99 defense was very much an attacking defense, a gap attacking defense. The 09 defense was very much rush just the front four, extended their arms, very much a read and react defense, because they had that much fluidity and that much universal elements within their players in the front seven, dexterity in their hips in the front seven, and same thing within the secondary. So let's go through a couple of those players. Of course, naturally, Prince Nakamura was a top draft pick. Alfonso Denard was a solid starter for his entire career there. Jared Crick was a high draft pick when he finally got drafted. Pierre Allen, Barry Turner were athletic defensive ends. Philip Dillard was arguably having one of the better seasons as an outside linebacker that year. Outside? Inside. Whatever. They had a bunch of hybrids on that defense. You had Gomes as one of their nickel safeties, if you will, who's still one of my favorite players, and still in that Texas game, one of the coolest interceptions I've ever seen. But yeah, Gomes, Hag, both of them hybrid safeties, blitzers, but then also nickels. Let's go through the numbers, all right? Now we're going to go through individual statistics because we'll be here all day. We all know how many numbers Ndamukong Suh put up. Crazy numbers, don't need to go over that again. One of their specialties in this defense, they had the #1 pass efficiency defense in 2009. #1 in the country, and they gave up 178 yards through the air that year. They did play in more of a pass-friendly year than in 1999, but you compare 178 yards through the air to the 175 of 1999. In 2009, they got 20 interceptions compared to 18 in 99. They only gave up 7 touchdown passes through the air. That's the advantage over 11 in 1999, okay? Now, that was their strength, absolutely, being #1 in pass efficiency. Against the rush, they gave up 93 yards on the ground. They gave up total yards, 272, yards a game. Compare that to the 99 defense. They gave up only 252. And sacks. Again, 99 defense 54, sacks 44 in 2009. Okay? Now, here's where the 09 defense has them, is points a game. They only gave up 10.4 points a game, while the 99 defense gave up 12.5. Now, when I was watching, like I already kind of explained what I felt like was 99 defense's weakness in terms of it felt like they weren't as fluid in their hips sideline to sideline. The 09 defense felt fast and sideline to sideline everywhere. They could play the run if they had to. If a spread offense, they could pretty much any type of offense that they felt like they had to play against. So I started leaning more towards them, and to the fact that they pretty much rushed only the front four on a regular. They did blitz once in a while, but not nearly as much as the 99 defense. Rush the front four, boom, we get enough pressure that way, which for the most part they did. And watching their athleticism, I was like, I think this defense is better. But then I paid a little bit more attention to the tackling, the open field tackling. And I kind of felt like the 99 defense was better in that regard. It felt like they were a little bit more physical. And then also when I changed my mind again was when I watched that Texas Tech game, where the 09 defense laid an egg. They gave up a bunch to that spread Texas Tech offense. The 99 defense, they did lay an egg to Colorado for the most part. So they laid an egg, but they didn't. I kind of changed my mind again. And I went back to the 99 defense. And how do you feel, what defense would have been better, say, against, because that year in 99, Michael Vick and Virginia Tech went on to play in the national title game against Florida State, and Michael Vick ran all over that Florida State team in a loss. How would that 99 defense have fared against the Michael Vick trying to keep him contained versus an Ndamukong Suh 09 defense and trying to keep Michael Vick contained? I think on the surface, I would say the 09 defense stood a better chance of keeping him contained. However, it's kind of a cop-out, but that Texas Tech game, you know, that quarterback for Texas Tech is no Michael Vick. Kind of did whatever he wanted in that game from a mobility standpoint. Hey, it's up to you guys, Nebraska fans. You kind of tell me what you think. From a star standpoint, a star-studded and athleticism standpoint, definitely got to go with the 09 defense. From an overall totality and just an overall dominance and a disrupting, turnover creating, stiff against the run, stiff against the pass. But I'm still going with the 99 defense. I still think I got to go with it. They were vicious, and for some reason it just clicked. Whether it was the leadership of the Brown brothers, even though they're not brothers, the leadership of that secondary, just everything was clicking. That defense was pretty ridiculous. Call it a playoff system, but moving on, as I go on and talk about the other great college defenses of all time, I'm pushing that Nebraska defense forward. The 1999 defense is my choice. Agree or disagree, you guys tell me what you think, but that's what I'm going with, guys. We need more Nebraska content, you know. It's a slow season, summer, there's not much going on, just recruiting. You know, we need more fun, nerdy stuff like this. Am I right? Anyway, so here's my contribution, if you will. All right. Praise Nebraska. Love you guys.